Good afternoon, and welcome to our Diversity Week Forum with the UCF Police Department. Today is geared towards campus safety and how our UCF police officers are here to serve in the entire UCF community, including students, faculty, and staff members, along with our visitors. I am Kent Butler, Interim Chief Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity Officer, and I appreciate you for being with us. My goal is for us to have a productive conversation while creating a safe space for people to share their ideas, questions, concerns about campus safety with the UCFPD. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our moderators and panelists. Today's moderators are Dr. Edwana Andrews, Interim Vice President of Community Services and Support, Student Development and Enrollment Services, and Mr. Rodney Graham, Student Government's Director of Student Affairs. Today's panelists from UCFPD are David Zambry, Deputy Chief of Police, Darnell Hill, Major, James Mangan, Commander, UCF Downtown, Adam Casebolt, Sergeant, Community Partnerships Unit, Matthew Scott, a Sergeant, and Bianca Becker, a detective. Thank you all for being here today. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our moderators, Rodney and Edwana.
Thank you, Dr. Butler. We have some questions for the panelists today, but we also would like you to participate as well. Please use the raise your hand feature at the bottom of your screen, or you can put your comments or questions in the Q&A box and we will try to address them. Even if you prefer not to speak today, you're always welcome to contact UCF Police Department directly. The information and contact information for that will be provided at the end of the discussion. Although we are limited in amount of attendees in this meeting, we will have this screen live on YouTube this afternoon.
Thank you, Rodney. So our first question for this afternoon's conversation with a cop at home goes to our Deputy Chief, David Zambry. So Deputy Chief, with the protests that we've seen across this country, as well as in our own backyards, it's heightened the need for transparency. It's heightened the need for community to do what's called community policing. How has the UCF Police Department, your department, been able to connect with the university campus in an effort to be transparent and to really discuss and make people feel what community policing is about?
Well, I think first, let's go back to what we've done forever. We've really not just partnered with our community, but we've really been a part of our community. We've really tried to work with students, faculty, and staff to make UCF a better place. So, but in light of recent events, we wanted to recommit. So we wanted to escalate what we did and do it better. So we really started doing some listening sessions and hearing what our community was telling us. We've had campus-wide forums. Our community partnerships have done additional virtual events. We've met with the Student Senate and talked about current issues today. And we reconvened the Chiefs Advisory Council so we could get better input from the community. And I think what that allows us to do is, clear up misconceptions, misunderstandings, and talk about what the community cares about. And sometimes we think we know, but we don't unless we really listen. So that's the first thing we did again, was just start listening and hearing what people said, not just locally, but around the country. And then we looked at actionable items that we could implement. What do people care about? They care about our policies, our training, our community outreach, and our community policing. And so, but the hard part is also getting the message out. We're a university of 70,000+ students. So we also developed a transparency website to share what the agency does. And we've also collaborated a lot with Office of Student Involvement, with Student Development and Enrollment Services, as well as faculty and staff. So again, it's really about listening and moving forward with actionable items that the community cares about. And I don't want to step on too many things, because if I talk too long, I may take up other questions. So I'll leave it at that, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of follow-up.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Zambry. The next question is for Major Hill. What kind of training do UCF police departments UCF police officers go through to prepare themselves for a diverse campus such as UCF, and also talk about the hiring process.
All right, good afternoon. I'd be happy to address that question. We have several things in place that we use to train our officers to deal with our diverse community. One of the things that we undertaken is our fair and impartial training, which I am an instructor along with Sergeant Amelia Bray. So we teach, basically learned about your implicit and expressed bias and how to deal with it. We also have a procedural justice training that we do, which shows our officers how to deal with our community in a respectful way. And it's not just about the outcome, but it's how we treat you during the entire process. We also have a bias-free policing policy, which governs officer behavior in dealing with the public. In relation to the hiring process, we have a diverse recruiting board where we look at applicants, and obviously if we spot applicants that are minority or more representative of our community, we kind of go after them to pull them into the community. We've looked at our application process to screen it, to remove questions that may seem of face value that are kind of discriminatory. For instance, we had feedback that the credit response may to minorities seem a little biased because the culturally the credit situation has affected more minorities than the majority. So we revamped our hiring questions just to be more inclusive of the community that we're trying to serve.
Thank you, Major Hill, for sharing. I'm glad that UCFPD is looking at all aspects of the hiring process, including the questions to ensure that you're able to establish a diverse workforce here on campus. It makes a huge difference. This question is for Commander Mangan. Commander Mangan, you and I, we go way back.
Yes, we do.
And I have valued your presence on campus, and we've had some great conversations. And so the question I have for you is in regards to free speech. As we know, free speech is protected by law. And we, of course, we value that here on campus. We are a campus of, as Deputy Chief said, over 70,000. And so we know that there is tremendous diversity within our campus community. And so what free speech policies on campus are UCFPD responsible for ensuring the protection of those rights for those individuals who come on to campus to express, or our students or faculty and staff who want to express those thoughts?
Well, thank you for the question, Edwana. So yes, protecting free speech is very important to the UCF Police Department. It's actually part of our mission statement is to protect all constitutional guarantees. So in Florida, there is a Florida state statute called the Campus Free Expression Act, and that allows all visitors, whether they're invited or not, to come on and express lawfully their free speech. And our job as UCF police officers is to not take a side. It's to make sure that everybody is able to safely express their constitutional right to free speech. So we'll be out there. You might see us standing between two groups, and that's only to maintain safety and to make sure that everybody has the ability to express their views and opinions safely and effectively.
Thank you. I think that information will be very helpful to the students and faculty that want to know how the logistics go behind the police department and when things happen on campus. Before we start our next question, I'd like to remind attendees that you can put any questions that you have in the QA box below, or just take yourself off of mute and raise your hand to ask that question if you'd like. But our next question is for Sergeant Scott. It says here, a lot of students have prepared negative experience with police officers. What is UCF Police Department doing to help students with those? And then what would you like to say to them?
Well, thank you so much for that question. First off, I've been in law enforcement with the UCF Police Department going on 15 years now. And I know from all that experience and all that time and what I've seen is UCF is very big in reaching out to its community and making sure that the community knows that we're there for them. And it's all about encounters, right? It's all about making sure that students feel comfortable enough to come up to us and talk to us. And we understand, you know, students come from all walks of life, from all across the United States, from literally all over the world, and they have different experiences with different law enforcement they may have in their corner. And so when they come to UCF, which is a large campus for people from different locations, everybody's got their different experiences that they bring with them. And sometimes those experiences are going to be negative. And I regret that students have those experiences, but I'm not here to make any excuses for what they've gone through. What I can say is that when you come to UCF, you're going to be able to deal with a very professional police department, a police department that's made up of many different people. It's as diverse as our community is, and they're going to be able to come up to us. We want you to come up to us. I want you to come up to me, talk to me. You know, you have questions about law enforcement. Hey, back home, I saw this, or, hey, I'm looking at stuff on the TV. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. What do you think? And UCF's all about partnership. UCF's all about our community. Our number one goal is to ensure the safety of our community. But at the same time, what comes with that is kind of that mental safety as well. Hey, am I safe here? Hey, what am I looking at? I don't understand. And it's very important that our students feel comfortable to come to us and talk to us. So that's kind of what I want to say, that UCF's a professional organization, the police department. We care about our students. We care about our campus. We're all about campus safety. And we want students to feel comfortable coming up to us and talking to us and knowing that no matter what, at the end of the day, we're here for them. We serve them, and we want to make sure that they feel protected and safe. And also with that comes dialogue. That's the most important thing. So for any students, hey, I'm a night shift supervisor. You see me on campus, please feel free, come up to me, talk to me. I walk around a lot. You'll see me on campus. Never be afraid to come up and talk to me about anything. And that's how it is for the rest of my coworkers. We all love speaking to students. We all love working at our agency. This is what we're here for. So that's kind of what I would like to say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I recall a time when we were face to face. We would hold annually our conversations with UCFPD and the RWC, and we would always have tremendous conversation. It was a great time for us to build relationships with our students. And I remember there were several times, like 11 o'clock, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go home now. But UCFPD officers, Corporal Alexander and Witherspoon and all of them were still there talking to the students. And I found out like they didn't leave until after midnight, just having conversation with the students. And so what you say about building those relationships are very important. And I would say not just for students, but also for staff. I mean, me personally, Commander Megan and I, he knows me. I mean, I made the decision to purchase a firearm, and I'm like, I'm afraid to go pick it up. Can I do this? And so I text him to get some information about, you know, how to properly pick it up and where to put it and so forth. And so UCFPD has definitely held true to being part of the UCF community, and I appreciate that. Of course, we still have work to do, and we're doing it, but I definitely appreciate that. And so our next question that we have is for Detective Becker. Hello. So for you, the question is, you know, you have expressed, and many of the others today have expressed about how important it is that the UCF police reflect the community that you're working in. Mm-hmm. So can you share with us a little bit of your background with UCF and why did you choose UCF?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Edwana, and thank you for that question. I actually started at UCF as a student back in 2010, and immediately when I got here, I fell in love with the campus, fell in love with the community, and I found ways to get involved on campus. And before I knew it, UCF was no longer my home away from home. It was just home. And this is where I decided that I wanted to be a police officer, because I think it's important to help people and to give back, and having the opportunity to serve the community that I was a part of, that I have ties to. It makes doing this job just so much more special. And it's an honor to serve as a police officer for UCF. Anyone who knows me knows that I bleed black and gold. So, anywhere I go, it's go Knights, charge on.
Thank you.
It's nice to hear we have alumni serving the students. I'm very happy about that. The next question we have here is for Sergeant Casebolt. You're part of the Community Partnership Unit. What sorts of programming do you put on for the students to offer a campus community? I know we have space in the student union, and then also, can you touch more on how you're doing it now during COVID?
Absolutely. Thank you, Rodney, for that question. So first, just to piggyback on Bianca and Rodney, your comments about alumni, many of our officers here at the UCF Police Department did attend UCF or are attending UCF. I am a two-time graduate of UCF, receiving my undergraduate degree and master's degree. So there are definitely strong ties throughout our organization, both with the policing side of UCF and the education side of UCF. So just wanted to throw that out there. Most of us probably on this panel, actually, I think have gone to school at UCF at one time or another. So regarding community partnership section, first, I'm kind of, let you guys know where we're located. I think it's really important that the community knows where they can reach out to the police department besides the main police department. And our office for community partnership section, we're located in the heart of the campus. We're located in the student union. And we have office here right near the Pegasus Ballroom and right across the hall from the Multicultural Academic Support Services office. And we would love to have anyone that has questions or safety concerns or just wants to stop in and say hello to us. My team here, a fantastic team that loves engaging with the community. We're constantly doing programming with registered student organizations and other groups, staff and faculty. We do security assessments throughout the campus and all kinds of other programming. To speak a little bit about some of the programming we do, some of our most popular programming requests is our self-defense programming. So we have a program we call Mighty Knights. And so Mighty Knights is a personal defense program that we are doing virtual right now. And we are hoping here in the next few months, we're going to be able to go back to an in-person session, because we know how much everybody really loves to get in there and hit the bags and really kind of engage physically in this class. But we've had really great reviews from our virtual programming. So please check out our website and sign up for that. Again, that's for students, staff, or faculty. And now the benefit of being in virtual world is we can have a much larger audience. I can have a much larger class present, up to 300 people at a time, to get that safety programming information. Another really popular interest is any kind of safety programming within departments. That includes programming that we do for classrooms, for student groups, for other staff groups related to active threat. We take any kind of security assessment for any kind of active threat type environment very seriously at UCF. We train regularly, and we also want to program the community in terms of giving them programming and knowledge and ability to make quick, decisive decisions if something was to happen in the UCF community, and what to do and how to react. And so that's always a very popular program for us to do the active threat training as well. Really, the sky is the limit in terms of programming. So if your group has an idea and you say, hey, we really would love to hear from the police department on this. For example, tonight, I have an event that I'm participating in the Pegasus Ballroom here. It's a event regarding DUI. And so we're going to be talking to the community in a community group about alcohol and DUI and how that can affect someone's life. So we have constantly events going on within the community in the realm of safety. So Rodney, thank you very much for that question. And if you guys have any other questions for my unit, please feel free to stop by in our office or send us an email, and I'd be happy to connect with you.
And the event that you mentioned is hosted by UCF Student Government. So definitely look on Night Connect to pre-register. $70 worth of prizes if your team wins trivia. So definitely come on out tonight.
Oh, that's fun. Can I come?
Yes, you.
Only for, okay. I love trivia. I love to win. Commander Mangan, I have a question for you.
Okay.
So you're serving UCF downtown.
Yes.
And so recently, UCFPD did a tour of the Wells Built Museum. Why was that important for PD to do a tour of the Wells Built Museum?
Well, so I'm relatively new to UCF downtown. I started here in February, but we started police operations 6 months or 7 months before that. So when I took over, I grew up in Orlando, but I wanted to know more about this area because I'm not familiar with the downtown area and specifically Paramore, where our campus is directly off of. So we made some contacts and were able to go over there and hear a presentation on the actual history behind Paramore. And I'm a history nerd, so I love that kind of thing. But it was very interesting to know, the past and also make a little bit of a connection with our community. And that's what my squads all strive for, is to try to make better connections with the community. And it's usually a little bit at a time. So we want to take an active role in our community. Our day shift squads routinely pick up football with some of the kids when they're leaving ACE school, which is right next to our campus. We're also doing some other charitable events coming up, and we're hoping next week to hand out Halloween candy to some of the kids in the area. So it's very important to us, though, to be part of the community, because we're not we're not just here. We want to be part of the community as UCF as a whole and as the police department.
Thank you. Next time y'all plan a pickup game, let me know. I want to come out and get some good video.
Absolutely.
Deputy Chief Zambry, I have a question for you, sir. So many officers around the nation have come under scrutiny because of how they've handled situations. Although we know UCF police officers undergo several hours of training to avoid, hopefully, participating in any of those situations, what does UCF Police Department's disciplinary review process look like for an officer who may be accused of not following policy?
Well, thanks for that question. I think first thing before we even talk about the discipline process is how few discipline related matters we have at UCFPD. 2018, we had 0 use of force incidents the entire year. So that's 2018. 2019, I think we had 5. And use of force for us could be, using very minimal force to put someone on the ground. As far as serious uses of force, when we talk about that, we really have 0. We don't have any serious instances of use of force by our officers. And so that, we can talk about the discipline process, but even before that, we do a lot of training to make sure our personnel talk to people, right? Because 90% of what we do is we can communicate and de-escalate situations before we ever get to, use of force, because that's really the kind of discipline most people are concerned with. So that's the more serious discipline. And of course, the other type of discipline we worry about is how do our officers interact with the public? So before we even get to the discipline process, we were one of the first agencies. In fact, I believe we were the first agency in Central Florida to issue body cameras to all of our personnel. So body cameras change how people operate. They change how people react. And because they know that there's accountability. So not only is there accountability, but there's also transparency with our body cameras and how we do that. So before we ever get to our investigations and disciplinary process, we really try to make sure our personnel know how to act towards our public and what our expectations are. And that not only starts then, it starts with the hiring process, it starts with our selection process. But as far as the discipline, first thing, we want to make sure that everyone can make comments, complaints, or concerns about our officers and their interactions with them. That's really important. So it's accessibility, right? If it's not accessible, you really can't complain. So folks can call up anytime, talk to a supervisor, and they can, talk about their concerns. And a lot of times it ends there. They talk to the supervisor, they get to explain what their concern with the officer's actions were, they talk through it, and the complaint's done. We also allow folks to make complaints via website. So they can tell us how they feel without ever coming in, ever talking to a person. So if they don't want to come in because maybe it's, intimidating, or because perhaps they don't have the ability to get here, or they don't want an officer coming to their home because they want a little privacy, they don't want to be put out there, they can go and complain via website, and then we follow up with our professional standards division. And every one of those complaints is not only looked at, but also followed up on. So again, if someone complains, they're going to get a call back. We're going to delve into it. We're going to find out what their concern is. Fortunately, very few of those complaints really move forward to a formal discipline process. Again, a lot of people just want to be heard. They want to be heard about what they didn't like about our customer service, or how we took a report, or how they felt they were treated. If it does move forward beyond that, there's a couple things we do. One, we're going to do a full investigation in accordance with the law. That could require interviews, taped interviews. It's very transparent. It's clearly delineated in statute of how we have to do it. And I think then the most important piece is follow-up. So, it's very easy to tell someone they did something wrong and either provide them some type of discipline, whether it's a written reprimand or something else, or time off. But I think the more important part is to train them properly. So if someone made a training error, let's make it a teachable moment. So not only for that officer, but for the rest of the officers. So, and if it's an attitude issue or a poor customer service issue, then we want all of our staff to know that's not the right path to go down. And let's correct that department-wide, not just a single incident. But, to recap, we're very fortunate. We have very few complaints, based upon the number of interactions with the public, and very few are, what we would deem serious, as far as like life-threatening situations or anything where anyone was so concerned that they felt it was egregious. And I hope I answered all that, but again, it's really about making sure that we follow up and correct it and use that teachable moment to improve our department. Because if people make honest mistakes, and honest mistakes are easy to correct, and that's what we try to do.
Thank you for that. I just would like to remind the attendees, if you have any comments or questions, please put them in the Q&A box or use the raise your hand feature. Deputy Chief Zambry, you kind of started to talk about it, but for those rare situations when you do need the body camera, can you talk about the new policy that UCFPD put in place with the timing of those body cameras?
Sure, Rodney. Well, based upon some concerns from some of our students, again, we try to listen, and then we try to move forward with actionable items. I believe it was the Speaker of the Senate asked a question and said, well, how long do your body cameras buffer? And basically what that means is technologically our body cameras are on, and prior to us turning them on to actually record audio and video, there's 30 seconds of video that is captured prior to activation. So the question was, well, if we do 30 seconds, could they have 60 seconds more of video that is captured prior to activation? So we talked to our vendor, made sure it was technically doable. The vendor said, sure, there's no reason why we can't do that. So, within a few weeks of being asked the question, we went ahead and implemented that. Again, that was a request from our community. So we looked into it, made sure we could do it, actionable item, and we moved forward, changed our policy, and updated all of our body cameras. So again, we want to be as transparent as we can, and we were glad to do it. It was a great idea.
Thank you. Major Hill, the next question is for you. Many students were upset to see UCF Police Department at the protest downtown. Could you explain to us why were they there, and instead of protecting students on campus?
All right, so as you know, as the university, it comprises of different organizations. The climate today, we just don't have enough officers to protect everything everywhere. So we are part of a regional emergency response team task force. And so what that means is when there is a major incident, this task force is activated and members of the emergency response team go out to where the resource is needed. It just so happened this time it was downtown Orlando that these resources came together. More recently, we used that same principle for when Miss Bennett and the conservatives for Trump held their march and demonstration on campus. We said, hey, we need some additional resources. Can you send us some deputies and officers to help us to make sure that the event goes well and that we have no issues on campus? What I would just like to say that the emergency response team are officers that have volunteered to be a part of that team. So we did not deplete the patrol resources to protect our campus. Our campus was safe. Our patrol squads were fully staffed, but we did have officers to assist with the downtown protest. When the students voiced their concern with the administration, we had given 4 days to the downtown protest. And so the chief, deputy chief, and the administration came to the agreement that, okay, we supplied our part, assisted with the downtown protest, but our students are very concerned. So we pulled our resources from that to bring our officers back to the main campus. But so I just want to reiterate, at all times, we had officers on campus to protect our students, but we did have an obligation to the regional task force to provide officers for their need.
Thank you, Major Hill. Appreciate you also sharing the feedback that was received in the response from UCFPD as well. I have a question for Detective Becker. I know UCFPD has a very special relationship with victim services. And of course, Sergeant Scott, you can also add to this question as well. How does UCF handle situations and working with victim services? Because it is a very delicate situation that is presented and needs to be handled accordingly.
Absolutely. We do work very closely with victim services, and Sergeant Scott has a lot of experience with them. But any case that we get where, we always ask our victims if they feel that they could benefit from our victim services team. And they're our victim services team for anyone who hasn't worked with them or dealt with them, which is a good thing. But anytime that we call on them, they're there. And they provide countless support to the victim, whether it's helping them through the court process or just helping them deal with the stress of the call. They help them in ways that we necessarily don't. And so every time that I've worked with victim services has been very powerful and very positive. And like I said, they're just there as an additional level of support. But they're very knowledgeable, like I said, through the court process. So once we've finished everything on our end, victim services can step in and help them guide through the court process. Sergeant Scott, do you want to add anything to that?
Absolutely, thank you. I was a detective before I got assigned to being a supervisor on the road for patrol. And one of my main duties working in our criminal investigations division was running with a therapy dog named Paisley. And every time that we would potentially have a victim of crime and our victim services would come over to the police department, we would basically be able to deploy our therapy dog. And victims are our #1 priority when it comes to assisting victims of crime and things like that on our campus. And we wanted to go a step further than just investigating the crime and finding the potential suspect and kind of getting justice that way. We wanted victims to know that we cared about them as well. We wanted them to know that, hey, how are you doing? Your mental processing on this terrible event, this tragedy that occurred to you is very important to us. We want you to leave the police department feeling like, you know what, not only was I able to tell my story, but I felt like these law enforcement officers really cared about me. And so we had several programs in place that was really knocking that out of the park for us. And especially when it came to the therapy dogs. So typically our victim services staff, I mean, they're amazing people. They're incredible. They've gone all across the country. They've done a bunch of trainings. They've been a part of different types of of incidents. Some of the major incidents you see on TV, our victim services have actually gone to assist with that, including Pulse a couple of years ago. So they're very well trained in assisting with victims of crime and making sure that those victims feel safe, feel that, hey, you know what, I can talk and I can tell my side of the story, because we also want to give that power back. A lot of crimes that we deal with at the police department, victims feel powerless, especially with certain crimes. You start getting into different things where the victim feels like there's nothing I can do. And they don't sometimes even feel that telling the police department will do any good. But we have excellent programs, see something, say something, and we'll do something. We're always trying to reach out to the community and say, hey, you can feel safe coming to us. We want you to come to us. It doesn't matter if you feel like, I don't know if I should report anything like that. The victim advocates, you can call them. There's information that will be provided. Everything you talk to them about is confidential. And if you even feel like, you know what, I do want to tell law enforcement, they will come with you to talk to us. And it's been such a great program. It's such there's such an amazing group of people. So we are 110% about victims. We care about them. And we have several programs that have worked in making sure that when victims leave our police department, they feel 100% satisfied. And that's what we want.
Thank you very much, Detective Becker and Sergeant Scott, for answering that question. I know that there's also a room that has been designed specifically for individuals to feel comfortable as well at PD Station.
Yes, ma'am. It's a soft room. We were actually one of the very first police departments in Central Florida to employ what's called a soft room. So typically what happens is, and everyone kind of watches TV, right? So there's a generalization that comes into play when people come to the police department. It's this big gray room, and there are very well-dressed detectives that sit across from you, and they start asking you a bunch of questions, and it's a little intimidating, a lot, and especially depending on the crime that occurred to you. It's very hard to sit across from a stranger and tell them everything, right? And so in combination with the fear and in combination with everything else that comes from being a victim, sometimes victims don't want to talk. They shut down. And now we're not necessarily getting all the information that we need to carry an investigation forward. So Commander Vargas actually was one of the first officers of our agency, was able to say, hey, he noticed this need, and he had resources that he worked with that he was able to say, why don't we create a space, a safe space that victims of crime, when they come to the police department, it's not just a gray room that they're sitting in across from strangers they don't know. It's an opportunity to come into this room that's well furnished. The walls are painted, there are pictures everywhere. You can sit down, and you need a moment, we give you that moment. Hey, you're safe. We want to make sure that you know that you're safe. Just take a moment. And part of that was also the therapy dog, where I would come in, I would bring my partner Paisley, and I would say, hey, I'm not going to ask you any questions. Let's just play with the dog for a second. What this does is it fosters an atmosphere of safety. It calms victims down, right? Because we know crime, lots of studies have been done, and science says that when a victim experiences crime, there are different chemicals that get released in the brain. So when law enforcement is asking a victim about that said crime, those same chemicals are being released again. And now that victim is reliving that trauma. And if law enforcement isn't really wary of that, you can see your victim shut down, and the victim's not giving you the information that you're trying to get in order to get that suspect and get that victim justice. But what the soft room and what the therapy dog does is you're giving that victim an opportunity to just tell you what happened organically, right? And, dopamine and serotonin, typically the chemicals associated with happiness, right? When you're touching a dog and you're playing with a dog, all of a sudden we're counteracting those negative emotions, those negative chemicals that are being released. And all of a sudden you have victims just organically, without us even asking a question, feeling safe in this soft room. Hey, this is what happened to me. Hey, this is what I saw. I can't believe this happened. And all of a sudden we're just getting this information and we haven't even asked a question. So the soft room and also the therapy dog, there are two programs that we have at UCF, one of the first actual agencies in Central Florida to employ it. And of course, other agencies started to follow suit as well. So we are so victim-centric. We work with so many different people, and we get lots of positive feedback about that. So it's very important that students know we have a safe space. We have different programs in place. You can feel comfortable coming and talking to us. We want you to.
Thank you, Sergeant Scott, for sharing all of the details that went into really creating that atmosphere for those who are brave to come and share their story. Thank you so much. I think it's great that UCFPD has officers that come up with these ideas and the support to really make it happen. So I have a question for Sergeant Casebolt. We have talked a lot during our time here about community policing. So let's delve into community policing a little bit. And what are your thoughts about community policing? And do you think that community policing has lost its way of policing? Because it's kind of a buzzword, community policing. But what are your thoughts on it, and what does it mean? How does it make people feel?
Thank you, Edwana, for that question. No, not at all has community policing lost its way. I think that's a foundation of our success in law enforcement and specifically here at UCF. So, I could tell you countless stories. I've worked here at the UCF Police Department now for 20 years. I started as a 911 operator, became a police officer in 2003. And over the years, the one thing that has held true throughout all of those years is what gives us our greatest successes as a policing agency, which in turn gives the community as a whole a success in with regards to those relationships and safety in general, is through community policing efforts. I know that there's many of our young officers that are probably not on this call that work night shift, for example. They have no idea the impact that they have through small encounters, how important it is. And we constantly try to foster. I'm a field training officer. I've been a field training officer since 2006. And many of our field training officers try to foster that same sense of community. And it starts with little conversations. I represent a unit that holds formal programming and formal events, training sessions. And while those are very important for the community, those officers that work patrol and that have those everyday organic interactions, they don't understand how many hundreds of impressions they're making upon the community throughout the week. And they do far more community policing than I can ever do, even within my unit, even though my unit is called the Community Partnership Section. So even within community partnerships, I can only do so much to make those connections. So those small organic encounters that they have, those relationships they build, are critical to the success of the community and within any community for safety. And that's sometimes the most difficult thing for law enforcement agencies to be able to do. The benefit we have at our police department is, our geographic footprint is not terribly large. I mean, UCF is a very, very big place. Obviously, there's a lot of people within the community, but the geographic footprint, we're talking a 2 to 3 square mile area on the main campus. The regional campuses are all relatively small, so it allows the same community members to see the same police officers on a regular basis and have those interactions to be able to develop those relationships. So if that officer was to go to a call for service, the chances are they've already had some interaction with members that are involved, members of the community that are involved in that call, whether they're a victim or a witness or a complainant, maybe an RA, a staff member. Edwana, for example, her and I have had several interactions over the years at various formal settings and informal settings. Many of the folks in this campus, we get to know each other. I'll show you one little quick story, kind of an anecdotal story. I met a staff member many years ago on patrol. Her name is Elizabeth. I've since learned she has recently retired, and I need to track her down to say hello and congratulate her on her retirement. She worked in the mailroom over at Lake Claire Apartments. And so I would stop in through my rounds on patrol on a pretty regular basis, and we'd lose touch every once in a while when I moved into our training section, and I was more of an administrative setting. But I'd still stop in and see her occasionally. And we were able to develop a relationship. We didn't have a lot in common, other than we worked excelled in the same community at UCF here. But we got to develop a relationship over the years. And so I'd stop in, and it was a very comfortable relationship. And anytime anything happened in Lake Claire and I'd stop into the office, she was always there. And it always helped kind of bridge the gap if there was a new RA or a new student in that community. They got to see a police officer who knew the community even before I started to interview them, for example, on a call for service, because Miss Elizabeth would say, "Hello, Adam, how are you? Good to see you again. I haven't seen you in a couple of weeks." And so that's very important for the community to understand who their police officers are. So I would encourage any community, if you're an RA listening to this, if you're a housing official, encourage the officers to stop in and say hello. Work out events and programming with those patrol officers, as well as my office, to allow us to continue to foster those relationships. The last thing I'd say is it's really easy to forget how important that is. You know, sometimes we get on our own tracks, whether you're a police officer, you know, you get sidetracked doing an activity or you're working on a report and you forget about those things. Same thing in the community. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask a question or say hello. If a police officer passes by and, you know, they don't interact with you, you know, be the initiator and say, hey, how are you, officer? Just want to say hello, you know, thank you, or ask them a question, you know, maybe on your mind. And try to reach them halfway and bridge that gap. Because sometimes those officers, they may be off thinking about the call they just handled, you know, the incident they were just involved with, or, you know, they got to pick their kids up from school later. And so it may be that they're not trying to be impersonal with you. It's just their mind may be elsewhere, just like any other person out in society. So I hope that answers your question, Iguana. If you have any other questions, feel free.
Thank you.
We have a question from an attendee about social media. With social media having a heavy influence on information that is relayed to people, how does that affect police officers and their response to them? And that is directed to Commander Mangan.
Well, social media is an interesting thing, right? 20 years ago when I started law enforcement, we had instant messenger and AOL. It was nothing like it is now. So we try to get our message out to the public through social media, through Twitter, through Facebook. We have UCF Police Department pages. So we understand that many of our actions are going to be recorded, both by our own body cameras and members of the public. I personally have no problem with somebody recording me because in most situations, if we're in an encounter, my body camera's on. So I think that the main thing is that we all have jobs to do. And again, our job is to maintain the safety and order of the University of Central Florida and make sure everybody's safe. So as long as that's not impeding that ability, you know, I personally am all for people recording everything because, you know, our agency is out front and our Chief Metzger is all about progressive, professional, and innovative in everything we do. And I believe that part of that is, you know, being accountable for our own actions. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. So Deputy Chief, we have a question that came in from an attendee that I want to pose to you. We've talked a lot about police officers are doing a great job with building relationships with students. But the question asks, what are the officers, UCFPD staff, what are they doing to build relationships with faculty and staff members, specifically faculty and staff members of colors? The attendee writes that they don't feel protected by UCFPD. And so they share that they had an experience. There was an event, or they assume it was an event a few weeks ago on Memory Mall, and there were officers everywhere, but they weren't interacting with the staff or faculty on campus. They weren't saying hi or waving or greeting the people who walked by even. So what does or has or will UCFPD do to connect with our faculty of staff of color?
Well, that's a great question. And I think there's really two parts, right? So obviously, if we're getting the question, we need to do a better job. So we need to be out there more, and we need to try to communicate with our faculty and staff of color. And maybe that means we need to reach out through the professional associations and have more listening sessions. So that way we can understand where we're falling short, where they don't feel safe, what we're not doing. And that's kind of a tough one, right? I mean, because a lot of faculty and staff are in their offices, at their desks. So it's kind of hard to come up and chat people up, right, when they're in their workplace. You know, it's a little easier, like the example on the Memory Mall. But I think if there was an event going on, and I'm assuming this was the Caitlin Bennett return, where she returned. And so the law enforcement officers who are out and about really they're not really doing what we would consider a public community policing effort. And I just want to say something about community policing real quick, because when we talk about community policing, sometimes we think that is the handshaking, meeting, greeting, but a lot of it is problem solving for your specific community. So those are two different things. There's community outreach, but community policing is not necessarily always community outreach. Sometimes it may be assessing the needs of your community and doing things that are necessary there. For instance, a lot of our focus has been on mental health due to our community and the challenges with mental health with young folks at college or college age students and the stressors associated with that. So it's really important that we don't always, assume community policing is community relations. It's a philosophy of how you, work with your community to make it better. So in some communities, it could be, working more with the homeless. And in some communities, it could be making sure that our students are being taken care of when they first get here and guiding them. And I think we have wraparound services, not the police department, but SDES does, and so does the university. That's not really community policing, but it's a whole service manner of taking care of our community. So I know I digressed about that, but I think we have to understand that community policing is just looking at the community and what we can do better. Now, as far as officers who are actually out there dealing with an event, sometimes their main mission and focus is that event. Or if they're standing by in an area, they are going to wait because they're waiting to have some type of action or need. So the expectation that the officers will be more friendly during certain times and certain functions, just, it's hard to see, but sometimes they're focused on something else that the public doesn't see. So, and sometimes, that's a challenge for the officers too. And I know everyone wants officers to engage them, but some officers are introverts. So, if you look at a lot of policing, it's a lot of solo activity in a car by yourself, sometimes for many hours, right, before you interact with citizens. So there is a little personal, style that people have. Some people are very extroverted and they can talk to people all day. And some people, they're a little quieter, just like your coworkers in your office. So keep that in mind, that we're a very diverse group and a very different group. So, some people are better at getting out and talking to the community and enjoying that. And some people, it's a little harder for them, just like our coworkers. We work with some people who may say 3 words all day, and they may be the funniest person and the funnest person to hang out with, but at work, maybe they're a little more focused. So, so try to just understand we're all very different and different personalities, different people. But we can definitely try to work harder with our staff and faculty members. And just to give you a little information, like Sergeant Casebolt said, a lot of us are UCF grads. Well, I'm an alumni. I'm a double alumni, so I got my bachelor's, my master's here. And the community matters to me a lot because my daughter just graduated from here. I have another daughter who goes to school here and lived on campus. So, keeping student, faculty, and staff safe here is personal to us. It's not, I drove into work because I live 20 miles away. This is my community. It's been my community for 27 years, Adams for a number of years. So just know a lot of us really care about the community and we are invested. So, if you have questions and after this, you can look me up, and if you want to give me a call and maybe guide me on what we can do better or what you see where we're lacking, let me know. And I'm happy to strike up a conversation, see what we can do better for our faculty and staff.
Thank you. The last question we have here is for all of the panelists. What is the number one thing that you would like people to know about UCFPD?
Well, I can start if everybody wants me to. So the number one thing is, most people already hit that, is that many of us are UCF alumni. I graduated in 2009, and we really care about our community, and we want everybody to be safe. And we're willing to do whatever we are able to lawfully to accomplish that. And we also are progressive and professional and innovative in many ways. Just one other thing was the body cameras. Our chief looked at other flaws in our system and saw that there was opportunities to have our body cameras activate when blue lights on our police cars are turned on. So they automatically will activate for that, or if our firearm is drawn from the holster. Those are just two of the many ways that we try to be accountable for our actions and take care of our community.
Well, for me, what I want everybody on this call listening to us and everybody that's streaming and who will eventually watch this in the future, what I want people to know about UCF Police Department is you will never meet another group of men and women who are so willing to run into a building to the sound of gunfire, run to danger, a car accident. Like I said, I've been working in this agency for a long time, and the people that I work with are true heroes. I know sometimes it's hard for us ourselves to say that, but I personally will say that the people I work with are incredible, and there's nothing that we won't do to ensure the safety of the people, the community that we protect. I know it's been said multiple times, but I too have also gotten my degrees from here. This isn't just another job for us. This is true family. And I think that's the real way to look at this when it comes to us all being a part of this community together. We're all family. It doesn't matter where you come from, what walk of life you're a part of, whatever you're going through, we're all a part of a UCF family. We're all Knights. And I think looking at it through that view lens makes things come together a little bit better. But UCF Police Department, once again, we train all the time, lots of training. We do a lot of stuff to ensure that when that situation occurs, our officers are going to respond in the appropriate manner. And once again, like I said, every single one of us got into this job to protect people, to help people. So you can be sure, should anything happen, whatever the case may be, UCF Police Department is going to be there. And due to our size and to the campus size, in a very short amount of time as well. So UCF Police Department, my brothers and sisters, serving our community, amazing people.
Thank you, Matt, for that. I guess I'll jump in here next. Matt's a tough act to follow there. So thanks, Matt, for those kind words. I'm going to go a little academic here. So real briefly, to quote Sir Robert Peel, anybody who's gone through any kind of criminal justice programs learned about Sir Robert Peel. One of his 9 principles that I hold, close to me is to remind myself that, what he said was the police are the public and the public are the police. And I would just leave for the group and for anybody listening. We are people just like you. We are human beings with different experiences and backgrounds. And remember that, when we triumph in great achievement, we do that because we're human. When we fail, when we struggle, when we make the wrong choices, right? We do that because we're human. And it's important to remember that we are just like your family, your brothers, your sisters, your cousins, your parents, your friends, those around you. We suffer through the same experiences and the same trials and tribulations in life. And I know it's really easy to get caught up in the television images of law enforcement that we are, some robot, that just goes through the motions out there, but we're not. We're human beings. This uniform we wear, there's a human being behind it. And I would just leave that for the group to remember, as you have your interactions with us in the future.
I can go next. So what I want to leave you guys with is this job at this place at UCF, at my community, this is my dream job. And I do this because I care about this community and I care about others. What Sergeant Casebolt said is absolutely true. We're humans. We're always learning. We're always growing. We're always evolving. But getting to wake up every day and do the job that I love for the community that I love makes all the difference in the world. So the one thing that I would like to leave my Knights with is I do this job for you. I do this job because I care for you. And my brothers and sisters in blue who work for UCFPD, I know that that is their reasoning too. So like everyone has said before, I encourage you that when you see us on campus, engage with us. We'll talk with you. We'll engage with you, because working at a university where we get to build these connections. A lot of other departments, they have a higher call volume. They don't get to build those relationships. We work here because we like doing that. So that is what I would like to leave you guys with is we care about you guys and we're here for you.
Thank you, Detective Baker. That is, I'm sorry, Becker. That is amazing. I love how you frame it. Our nights. We are a night family. And Deputy Chief Zambri and Major Hill, I am definitely going to hold the two of you accountable to making sure that we work on establishing our relationships with our faculty and staff of color, so that they too can feel the love and protection from you all in our community. So this concludes our time here with Coffee with a Cop at home. Hopefully you enjoyed the conversation. We thank you for joining us, for sharing, and for listening. These conversations are incredibly important as we all work together to move UCF and our society forward. As a reminder, you can find the recording of this event on UCF YouTube's page. I encourage you to please stay safe, stay well, have a great day, everyone. Go Knights, and what do we say, everyone?
Charge on.
Charge on.
That's right, charge on. Bye, y'all.